scattered across the observation deck of Kepler Station. Instead, she stood there holding a bullet. Not a plasma bolt, not a coherent energy discharge. A bullet. The kind of primitive kinetic projectile that museums displayed behind protective glass with little placards reading Ancient Terran Warfare, circa 2100 CE. The kind that hadn't been manufactured anywhere in the known galaxy for 3 centuries. General Vexthak stared at his sidearm like it had personally betrayed his entire species, which, considering the circumstances, wasn't far from accurate. "Interesting choice of ammunition," Vasquez said, turning the warm metal slug over in her palm. She seemed genuinely curious rather than terrified, which was exactly the wrong reaction according to every diplomatic protocol manual ever written. "Haven't seen one of these since the War College. Mind if I keep it? My nephew collects antiques." The Centauran delegate made a sound like air escaping from a punctured habitat seal. 3 of the hegemony's junior officers had gone catatonic. Ambassador Kreetak of the Syndicate Worlds was frantically tapping at his communication implant, probably trying to reach his superiors with an explanation that wouldn't get him immediately recalled for psychological evaluation. "That's not possible," whispered Dr. Yilmoth, the station's chief xenobiologist. Her voice carried the particular strain that came from watching fundamental laws of physics pack their bags and leave without forwarding addresses. "Plasma weapons don't fire solid projectiles. They can't. The energy matrix would destabilize the moment it encountered matter in that configuration." Vasquez glanced up from her examination of the bullet. "Oh, are you having technical difficulties? We could reschedule if you need time to service your equipment." Vexthak's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation in his species. "There are no technical difficulties. This weapon underwent full maintenance protocols this morning. It contained a standard plasma charge rated for medium-intensity conflict resolution." "Well, something clearly went wrong," Vasquez said, offering him the bullet with the same bland politeness she'd used to decline the hegemony's initial territorial proposals. "Here. Maybe you can figure out where this came from." The general recoiled as if she were holding a live fusion grenade. "I don't want it." "Are you sure?" "It's yours. It came out of your gun." "It didn't come out of my gun." "General, I watched it come out of your gun. Everyone here watched it come out of your gun. Unless you're suggesting I conjured a bullet out of thin air for the sole purpose of making this negotiation more interesting." The silence that followed could have been used to preserve organic specimens. Several of the alien delegates exchanged glances that conveyed entire diplomatic conversations in the span of seconds, the primary message being, "Are we certain she didn't conjure a bullet out of thin air?" Ambassador Thexvon of the Outer Rim Territories finally broke the quiet. "Commander Vasquez, perhaps we should adjourn while technical personnel investigate this anomaly." "Anomaly?" Vasquez raised an eyebrow. "A misfire is hardly an anomaly. Though I will say, General, if you're going to threaten someone with a weapon, you should probably make sure it works first. Basic safety protocol." Vexthak's expression suggested he was reconsidering his species' traditional stance against recreational drug use. "I did not misfire. I discharged a plasma weapon at standard intensity directly at your center mass. You should be dead." "But I'm not." "No, you're not." "So either your weapon malfunctioned or you're a terrible shot. Which explanation makes you feel better about yourself?" Dr. Yilmoth's secondary arms were performing calculations on a portable data pad while her primary hands gestured wildly. The energy signature was correct for a plasma discharge. Thermal readings confirm weapon activation. But the projectile... She trailed off, staring at her readings like they contained personal insults written in ancient script. "What about the projectile?" Ambassador Kreetak demanded. "It materialized." "Not fired, not launched, materialized," as in spontaneous generation of matter in defiance of conservation laws that have held constant since the universe began cooling. The hegemony's military attaché, Colonel Drenko, stepped forward. His species prided itself on logical analysis under pressure, which made his current expression of barely controlled panic particularly notable. Are you suggesting the humans somehow created matter from nothing? I'm suggesting our instruments detected exactly that. Vasquez looked around the room with the patient expression of someone waiting for adults to finish discussing imaginary monsters under the bed. Look, this is fascinating, but we were in the middle of negotiating mining rights in the Kepler belt. The hegemony wants exclusive access to asteroids that clearly fall within Earth's established territorial claims. General Vexthak tried to intimidate me with his sidearm, which, by the way, violates about 12 different station regulations, and when that didn't work, we somehow ended up debating physics instead of policy. The physics matter, Dr. Yilmoth said, her voice tight. If humans can spontaneously generate matter, I didn't generate anything. You generated a bullet in your own weapon and then shot it at me. If anyone's violating physics here, it's your military-industrial complex. General Vexthak made a sound that didn't translate through the universal communicators. His aide helpfully whispered. He said something anatomically improbable about the laws of thermodynamics. I heard him, Vasquez replied mildly. And I've had worse things said about me by better generals. The observation. Lounge fell silent again. Outside the transparent aluminum viewports, the asteroid fields of Kepler drifted in their ancient dance around the system's star. 3 months ago, those rocks had been empty space claimed by no one. Then human survey ships arrived, followed by human mining platforms, followed by human colonists who looked at airless chunks of ice and iron and somehow saw home. The hegemony had expected the usual patterns: establish dominance through superior firepower, negotiate from strength, acquire resource rights through carefully applied pressure. It was a formula that had worked across dozens of species and hundreds of systems. Except humans seemed to exist in a universe with different rules, not better technology or superior tactics. Different rules. Fundamental ones. Ambassador Thexavon cleared his throat. Perhaps we should focus on the immediate diplomatic concerns. Commander Vasquez, the hegemony's position remains that these mining rights require renegotiation, given the strategic importance of— No, Vasquez interrupted, tucking the bullet into her jacket pocket. Our position is that we followed proper colonial protocols, filed appropriate claims, and established lawful possession. Your position is that you want our stuff because you have bigger guns, except today we discovered that your bigger guns apparently shoot our ammunition. She stood, gathering her data tablets with brisk efficiency. I suggest you spend some time figuring out how that happened before our next session, because if your weapons keep malfunctioning this spectacularly, you might want to reconsider using them as negotiating tools. The human diplomat walked out of the observation lounge like she hadn't just caught a bullet with her bare hands, and pocketed it as a conversation piece. Behind her, some of the galaxy's most sophisticated military and political minds sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they'd witnessed. General Vexthak holstered his weapon with the careful movements of someone who no longer trusted basic cause and effect. Get me a full technical analysis of this weapon, and find out everything we know about human physics. Dr. Yilmoth was still staring at her readings. General, I don't think the problem is human physics. I think the problem is that humans don't follow physics at all. The security footage made everything worse. Chief Inspector Zal Thren had reviewed the incident from 17 different angles, including thermal, electromagnetic, and quantum displacement sensors. Every recording showed the same impossible sequence: plasma weapon discharge, energy signature consistent with standard military specifications, and then nothing where something should have been, followed by something where nothing should exist. Run it again, demanded General Vexthak, who had stationed himself in the security center like a monument to military stubbornness. General, we've analyzed this sequence 43 times. The conclusion remains unchanged. Then your equipment is defective. Inspector Zalthran belonged to a species that had evolved from persistence predators. When presented with contradictory evidence, their instinct was to dig deeper rather than dismiss inconvenient facts. Sir, with respect, our equipment is functioning perfectly. The plasma bolt exists for exactly 0.003 seconds after leaving your weapon's discharge chamber. Then it ceases to exist. Simultaneously, a kinetic projectile begins to exist approximately 15 centimeters from Commander Vasquez's position. Things don't just stop existing. No, they don't. Which is why I've requested consultation with the station's quantum mechanics specialist. Dr. Hesimar arrived precisely on schedule because quantum Vrex were pathologically punctual. Her species had developed space travel by refusing to acknowledge that faster-than-light communication was impossible, which made them either the galaxy's most accomplished physicists or its most successful con artists. The jury was still out. Fascinating, she murmured, manipulating holographic displays with six-fingered precision. The quantum signature suggests localized reality editing. Vexthak's mandibles clicked irritably. Explain that in terms military personnel can understand. Someone changed the rules. Not globally, just in a small area around the human. Your plasma bolt encountered a region of space where kinetic projectiles are more probable than energy weapons, so it obligingly transformed into the more likely option. That's ridiculous. Yes, it is. It's also what happened. Ambassador Kretak had been monitoring the investigation from his diplomatic quarters, but the mounting implications finally forced him to attend personally. Dr. Hesimar, are you suggesting humans possess technology capable of local reality manipulation? I'm suggesting someone does. Whether it's technology remains unclear. What else could it be? The physicist's expression carried the particular resignation of someone explaining water to fish. Conscious reality editing occurs naturally in several species, though usually in limited ways. The meditation masters of Proxima can influence probability within arm's reach. The void singers alter local space-time through harmonic resonance. But those abilities require decades of training and intense concentration. And humans? Humans appear to edit reality through sheer expectation. The diplomatic lounge had been reopened for the afternoon session, though Commander Vasquez was notably the only attendee who seemed comfortable occupying the space where impossible events occurred. She had arranged her materials with the same methodical precision she'd shown yesterday, as if bullets materializing from plasma weapons were standard features of interstellar negotiations. Commander, Ambassador Thexvon began carefully, we've been discussing the unusual circumstances surrounding yesterday's incident. Oh, good. Did you figure out the malfunction? I'd hate for someone to get hurt by defective equipment. The assembled delegates exchanged meaningful glances. Dr. Yilmoth leaned forward. Commander, in your experience, do Earth's weapons ever produce unexpected results? Vasquez paused in her data review. Define unexpected. Projectiles appearing where energy discharges should occur. Tools functioning beyond their designed specifications. Equipment repairing itself without maintenance. Well, sure. Murphy's Law in reverse. If something can go right, it eventually will. Though I wouldn't call that unexpected so much as optimistic engineering. Senator Clix of the Border Confederacy spoke up. Optimistic engineering? Build something well enough, and it'll surprise you. Our colony ships are rated for 50-year operational cycles, but the Determination has been running for 87 years with minimal maintenance. The crew just expects it to keep working, so it does. That's not how mechanical systems function, Dr. Yilmoth protested. It's how human mechanical systems function. We don't build things to fail. Ambassador Kretok pulled up holographic files on his personal display. Commander, I've been reviewing reports from our trade missions to human settlements. On New Geneva, our representatives noted that agricultural equipment operates in soil conditions that should destroy standard machinery within weeks. Geneva's got challenging terrain, sure. The soil contains acids that dissolve titanium steel alloys. So you use better materials. There are no better materials. Our metallurgists tested samples of your equipment, standard titanium steel alloys that should have been destroyed within days, yet they show no corrosion damage despite years of operation. Vasquez shrugged. Colonial engineers are resourceful. They make things work. How? However they need to. The silence stretched until Colonel Drenko cleared his throat. Commander, on Kepler Prime, human children reportedly demonstrated knowledge of quantum mechanics before completing basic education. Kids are curious. They ask questions. These children solved theoretical problems that our graduate students struggle with. Smart kids. Without formal training, without access to advanced computational resources, a 7-year-old human explained space-time curvature using finger paints and playground equipment. For the first time, Vasquez looked genuinely puzzled. That does sound unusual. Maybe they watched educational programs? We verified their entertainment access, standard children's programming, nothing related to advanced physics. Huh. Well, kids pick things up. Maybe they overheard adult conversations. Dr. Hesimar activated a new holographic display. Commander, we've documented 47 instances of anomalous events occurring within proximity of human settlements over the past 18 months. Equipment functioning beyond specifications, environmental conditions shifting favorably, probability cascades that consistently benefit human interests. Vasquez studied the data with professional interest. That's quite a coincidence. Yes, it is. Too much of a coincidence. What are you suggesting? We're suggesting, Ambassador Thexavon said carefully, that perhaps humans possess certain capabilities that haven't been formally documented. Like what? Reality manipulation, probability editing, localized suspension of physical laws. Commander Vasquez stared at them for several seconds. Then she laughed, not the diplomatic chuckle of someone deflecting tension, but genuine amusement. You think we're wizards? We think, General Vexthak said grimly, that you're something we don't understand. General, we're miners and farmers and engineers who happened to develop space travel. We're not mysterious. We're just stubborn. Stubborn enough to make the universe comply with your expectations. Stubborn enough to keep trying until things work the way they should. Dr. Hesimar manipulated her displays again. Commander, what do you think should have happened when General Vexthak fired his weapon yesterday? He should have been immediately detained for violating station security protocols. I mean, physically. What should the weapon have done? Vasquez considered this. If he was trying to intimidate me? It should have produced something dramatic, but ultimately harmless. Empty gesture, empty threat. Like a bullet instead of a lethal plasma discharge? Sure, makes sense. The delegates fell silent again. Outside the viewports, human mining platforms continued their steady work among the asteroids, extracting resources with the patient efficiency of people who expected the universe to eventually cooperate with their plans. General Vexthak studied the human negotiator with the intensity of someone trying to identify a new form of weapon. Commander, do you believe you can influence probability through conscious will? I believe you get what you expect if you're willing to work for it. That's not an answer. General, that's the only answer that matters. The emergency session convened at 0300 station time, when most species were in their rest cycles, and diplomatic niceties could be abandoned in favor of honest panic. Ambassador Kretok had called the meeting after Dr. Hesimar completed her comprehensive analysis, and the results were disturbing enough to warrant waking everyone. The mathematical models are conclusive, the quantum Vrex physicist announced, projecting complex equations into the chamber's holographic display. Humans exist in a state of continuous low-level quantum field manipulation. They're unconsciously editing probability matrices within approximately a 50-meter radius of their position. Senator Klix rubbed her temples with all four hands. In terms the rest of us can comprehend, Doctor. They make things more likely to go their way. Not through conscious effort, through expectation. Their brains generate quantum resonance patterns that influence causal relationships. General Vexthak leaned back in his chair, which groaned ominously under his weight. So when I fired at the human, she expected the threat to be ultimately meaningless. Your weapon obliged by producing a harmless projectile instead of lethal plasma, without her conscious knowledge. Correct. The effect appears entirely subconscious. Humans seem unaware they're violating fundamental physics. Ambassador Thexfon pulled up tactical displays showing human colonial expansion. This explains their success rate. 73% of human settlements establish successful long-term colonies. The galactic average for new species is 12%. Their equipment works better than it should, Dr. Yilmoth added. Their crops grow in conditions that should be hostile. Their children intuitively understand concepts they've never studied. They're unconsciously making reality conform to their expectations. Colonel Drenko activated secure communication channels to his superiors. We need to classify this information at the highest levels. If other species discover that humans are walking probability manipulators— Too late, Senator Klix interrupted. The Syndicate worlds have been monitoring our investigation. They're already mobilizing diplomatic resources. For what purpose? Alliance negotiations. If humans can unconsciously edit reality, several species want them as partners rather than competitors. Ambassador Kreetok's expression darkened. Others will view them as existential threats. The Chamber's communication system activated with an priority override signal. Chancellor Mordek of the Hegemony High Command appeared in holographic projection, his ceremonial battle armor gleaming under harsh lighting that suggested he was calling from a military installation rather than diplomatic quarters. General Vexthak, report. Chancellor, the human situation is more complex than initially assessed. Explain. Vexthak glanced around the chamber at the assembled delegates, most of whom were frantically composing messages to their respective governments. Sir, humans appear to possess unconscious reality manipulation capabilities. They're not using advanced technology. They're spontaneously altering probability through expectation. The silence from the holographic projection lasted long enough for everyone present to question whether the communication link had failed. Finally, Chancellor Mordek spoke. Are you suggesting humans are a psychic species? I'm suggesting there's something unprecedented, sir. How unprecedented? Dr. Hesimar stepped forward. Chancellor, our models indicate that humans exist in permanent quantum superposition with their desired outcomes. They don't know they're doing it, but they're continuously selecting probability branches that favor their survival and success. Unconscious precognition? More like unconscious reality editing. They expect things to work out, so they do. Chancellor Mordek's image flickered as he processed this information. Dr. Hesimar, in your professional opinion, what are the strategic implications? That depends on whether you view humans as potential allies or potential threats. Elaborate. If they're allies, you benefit from proximity to beings who unconsciously make positive outcomes more probable. If they're threats, She paused, manipulating equations in the holographic display. If they're threats, conventional military action becomes problematic. How do you defeat an enemy whose mere presence makes their victory more likely? The chamber erupted in urgent conversations as delegates contacted their governments with varying degrees of alarm and excitement. The Syndicate World's representative was negotiating trade agreements. The Border Confederacy was discussing defensive alliances. The Outer Rim territories were calculating resource-sharing agreements. Only General Vexthak remained focused on the immediate problem. Where is Commander Vasquez during this discussion? Inspector Zalthrin checked his monitoring displays. Hydroponics Bay 7. She's examining our food production systems. Why? According to her request forms, she wants to understand how we maintain agricultural sustainability in closed-loop environments. Apparently, human colonies have developed superior techniques. Of course they have, Dr. Yilmoth muttered. They probably convinced the plants to grow better through sheer optimism. The hydroponics bay was a marvel of engineering efficiency. Controlled atmospheric composition, precisely regulated nutrient flows, and genetically optimized crops designed for maximum yield in minimal space. It represented decades of agricultural science refined to mathematical perfection. Commander Vasquez was crouched next to a monitoring station, comparing readings on a portable scanner with the bay's environmental displays. She looked up as the delegation approached, her expression showing mild curiosity rather than concern about being surrounded by increasingly agitated alien officials. Interesting setup, she said, gesturing at the growing chambers. Though you might want to adjust the phosphorus levels in Section 12. Your tomatoes look undernourished. Dr. Yilmoth checked the sector readings. Section 12 shows optimal nutrient balance according to our agricultural specifications. For the varieties you're growing, sure. But those particular plants would be happier with about 15% more phosphorus. Look at the leaf coloration. The xenobiologist studied the plants in question. After several minutes, she admitted. The discoloration is subtle, but you're correct. How did you identify nutritional deficiency without chemical analysis? Experience. You spend enough time around growing things. You learn to recognize what they need. Commander, Ambassador Thexavon interrupted. We need to discuss the implications of recent discoveries about human capabilities. Vasquez straightened, brushing soil from her hands. What discoveries? The investigation into yesterday's incident has revealed certain unusual characteristics of human psychology and physiology. Such as? General Vexthak stepped forward. Commander, you're unconsciously manipulating quantum probability fields. I'm what now? You're editing reality through subconscious expectation, making favorable outcomes more likely without realizing you're doing it. Vasquez blinked. Then she blinked again. Then she started laughing, not the polite diplomatic chuckle from yesterday, but the deep, helpless laughter of someone who'd just heard the universe's best joke. You think I'm psychic? We think you're something far more dangerous. Chancellor Mordek's voice came through Vexthak's communication implant. A species that unconsciously rewrites natural laws. Chancellor, with respect, that's insane. Is it? Your colonies succeed at impossible rates. Your equipment functions beyond specifications. Your children solve problems they shouldn't understand. Yesterday, you turned a plasma weapon into an antique firearm through passive expectation. Vasquez wiped tears from her eyes. Chancellor, do you know what humans call that? What? Tuesday. The silence that followed was so complete that the hydroponics bay's environmental systems seemed unnaturally loud. Finally, Senator Klix found her voice. Commander, you're saying these phenomena are normal for humans? I'm saying humans are really good at making things work, We've been doing it for thousands of years. By violating physics? By ignoring physics when it gets in the way. Dr. Hessimar's expression suggested she was reconsidering her entire understanding of causality. Commander, you can't simply ignore fundamental natural laws. Doctor, humans have been ignoring fundamental natural laws since we figured out how to make fire underwater. We're not psychic. We're just really, really stubborn. General Vexthak's mandibles clicked in rapid succession. Commander, what happens when your species encounters something that absolutely cannot be made to work through stubbornness and expectation? Vasquez considered this question with the seriousness it deserved. General, we haven't found anything like that yet. By morning, Kepler Station had transformed into the galaxy's most tense diplomatic venue. 3 battle fleets hung in the outer system: Hegemony, Syndicate, and Border Confederacy, each positioned with the careful precision of predators circling wounded prey. The only question was whether humanity represented the wound or the predator. Commander Vasquez arrived for the final negotiation session, carrying a steaming cup of coffee and wearing the same unflappable expression she'd maintained throughout the entire crisis. Behind her, the assembled or alien delegates looked like they'd spent the night contemplating their mortality and finding it wanting. "Morning, everyone," she said cheerfully, settling into her chair. "Beautiful view today. I love how the morning light catches the ice crystals in the asteroid fields." Ambassador Thexvon glanced through the viewport at the warships maintaining careful firing solutions on each other. "Commander, are you aware of the military buildup in this system?" "Hard to miss, though I notice nobody's shooting yet, which suggests this is more political theater than actual combat preparation." General Vexthak stood abruptly, his ceremonial armor clanking with nervous energy. "Commander Vasquez, I formally challenge you to personal combat under Article 7 of the Galactic Conflict Resolution Protocols." "What for?" "To prove that humans are not invincible reality manipulators who pose an existential threat to galactic civilization." Vasquez sipped her coffee thoughtfully. "General, I'm a mining rights negotiator, not a combat specialist. Wouldn't you prefer to challenge someone more appropriate?" "I challenge the human representative present." "That's me, unfortunately. Though I should mention that accepting personal combat challenges from frustrated military officials isn't actually part of my job description." Dr. Hessimar leaned forward urgently. "Commander, refusing the challenge could be interpreted as an act of cowardice by several species present. And accepting it could be interpreted as assault by Earth's legal system. The challenge is sanctioned under interstellar law." Chancellor Mordek's voice crackled through the communication system. "Honor combat to first blood, with medical support standing by." Vasquez finished her coffee and set the cup down with a small clink that somehow echoed through the chamber. "Fine. But I want it on record that this is ridiculous." "Noted," Ambassador Kretok said, frantically documenting everything for what would undoubtedly become the most analyzed diplomatic incident in galactic history. The station's gymnasium had been hastily converted into a formal dueling arena, complete with medical stations and recording equipment. General Vexthak arrived in full ceremonial armor, carrying a weapon that looked like it could crack asteroids. Commander Vasquez arrived in her standard diplomatic attire, carrying nothing more threatening than a stylus. "Commander," Dr. Yilmoth called from the medical station, "you're permitted to select weapons from the station's armory." "Thanks, but I'm good." "You're facing a heavily armed opponent with no weapons." "I'm facing a nervous general with a malfunctioning sidearm." "I think I'll manage." The assembled delegates filled the observation deck like spectators at an execution. Several were placing bets through encrypted channels, though the odds heavily favored the human for reasons that made no mathematical sense. General Vexthak raised his weapon, the same plasma sidearm that had started this entire crisis. This time, he announced loudly, there will be no malfunctions, no impossible projectiles, no reality manipulation. If you say so, Vasquez replied, checking her watch. Though we should probably wrap this up quickly. I have a lunch meeting with the station's engineering staff about improving your waste recycling systems. Begin, Chancellor Mordek commanded. Vexthak fired immediately, his weapon discharging with the distinctive whine of military-grade plasma. The energy bolt streaked across the gymnasium in a brilliant line of superheated particles aimed directly at Vasquez's center mass. She caught the bullet. Not a plasma bolt this time, but an actual old-fashioned kinetic round that materialized exactly where the energy discharge should have been. The metal was warm, but not burning, spinning gently in her palm like a coin tossed by a cosmic comedian. The silence in the gymnasium lasted approximately 3 seconds before General Vexthak threw his weapon on the floor and sat down heavily on a equipment bench. "This is impossible," he said to no one in particular. "This is Tuesday," Vasquez corrected, walking over to hand him the bullet. "Here. Add it to your collection." Dr. Hesimar was frantically recording quantum measurements while muttering calculations under her breath. Impossible. The energy matrix was perfect. Standard military specifications. No interference patterns. No external quantum manipulation. The plasma simply decided to become a bullet instead. "Doctor," Senator Click said quietly, "I don't think the plasma decided anything. I think the universe decided the plasma should be a bullet because that's what the human expected. That's not how causality works. No, it's not." Which is exactly the problem. Commander Vasquez examined the gymnasium's equipment with professional interest. Nice facility, though you might want to upgrade your ventilation systems. The air circulation in here is suboptimal for physical activity. Ambassador Thexvon stepped forward carefully, as if approaching something that might explode. "Commander, do you understand what just happened? Your general fired his weapon again. It malfunctioned again, and I caught another bullet. Pretty straightforward. You turned a plasma weapon into a kinetic weapon through unconscious expectation. Your general turned a plasma weapon into a kinetic weapon through poor maintenance. The weapon was functioning perfectly. Clearly not, since it keeps shooting bullets instead of plasma." General Vexthak looked up from his contemplation of universal injustice. "Commander, what would happen if I fired this weapon at someone other than you?" "Probably work fine. Your issue seems specifically related to intimidating humans." "And if another human were present?" Vasquez considered this. "Depends on the human, I suppose, though most of us have a pretty low tolerance for being threatened." Chancellor Mordek's voice carried new undertones of carefully controlled fear. "Commander Vasquez, on behalf of the hegemony, I formally withdraw all territorial challenges to human colonial claims in the Kepler system." "That's very reasonable of you. Furthermore, we would like to negotiate a comprehensive trade agreement and mutual defense pact. I'll need to consult with Earth's colonial administration, but that sounds promising." The communication system crackled as other faction leaders joined the channel. Within minutes, Commander Vasquez had received 3 alliance proposals, 5 trade agreements, and 2 requests for technological cooperation from species that had never previously acknowledged human existence. She accepted them all with the same pleasant efficiency she'd used to negotiate mining rights, as if accidentally terrifying the galaxy's major powers was just another item on her diplomatic checklist. "Excellent," she said, gathering her materials. "I'll forward these proposals to the appropriate departments. Now, if you'll excuse me, I really do have that lunch meeting about your waste recycling systems." As the human diplomat walked out of the gymnasium, General Vexthak remained sitting on the equipment bench, staring at the bullet in his palm. "Inspector Zal Thren," he said finally. "Yes, General." In your professional opinion, how do we fight someone who makes physics optional? Sir, I don't think we fight them at all. I think we smile, nod politely, and hope they keep finding us useful. Outside the station, the three battle fleets began powering down their weapons systems and assuming peaceful formations. Not because of any formal ceasefire agreement, but because everyone involved had suddenly realized that conventional military force was meaningless against a species that could turn plasma into bullets through casual expectation. In her quarters, Commander Vasquez reviewed the day's agreements while eating a sandwich and planning her afternoon presentation on improved atmospheric recycling. She remained completely unaware that she had just revolutionized galactic diplomacy by demonstrating that humans didn't fight wars. They simply convinced the universe that wars were inefficient, and someone should really do something about that. The galaxy would spend decades analyzing what they'd witnessed, developing new theories of quantum consciousness and probability manipulation. Humans would spend the same decades building colonies, improving technology, and occasionally wondering why aliens always seemed so nervous around them. Both approaches would work exactly as expected.